Are you struggling with perfecting Vectric Vcarve Inlays? This video changes everything. Welcome to the ultimate Vcarve Inlay tutorial. Today, I'll guide you through my most comprehensive approach yet, packed with insider tips for achieving impeccable results. Okay, so the first set of toolpaths we're going to do is the traditional Vcarve or a Zank Method inlay. And for that, I'm going to introduce you to a formula that I've used that's been pretty tried or true for all the inlays that I do. And that is the start depth plus the flat depth will equal pocket depth plus 1.0 millimeters on the plug side. So on our pocket side, we're going to highlight our pocket vector. And we are going to do a Vcarve engraving toolpath. That's going to be a start depth of 0, a flat depth of 6 millimeters. And for our tool, we are selecting the Speed Tool W01005 V-bit, which is a 5.26 degree tapered ballnose bit. We will configure it as a tool type of V-bit. And we will go a full depth of pass that will exceed what our pocket or our plug depth will be. Spindle speed, feed rate, and plunge rate will be dependent on your CNC. All right, so now let's go ahead and name our toolpath. And we will call that 10.52, which is the angle of our V-bit, and Zank, because we're using the Zank method on this, 0.6 underscore pocket, because this will be our pocket toolpath. And we can go ahead and calculate that out. And as we see, we get an error that says that our 1/8 inch upcut end mill is not going to fit for our pocket. We can say OK on that, and that's fine. So now that the toolpath is drawn, we can go ahead and preview the visible toolpaths. And what we see is that we get our pocket. Now that we've done our pocket, we can go ahead and highlight our second set of vectors, which we can do right here on the 3D toolpath. We'll highlight those. We will create another Vcarve engraving toolpath, and this time we're going to go with a start depth of 4.75 millimeters and a flat depth of 2.25. And I derived those numbers from using the formula again of start depth plus flat depth will equal pocket depth plus 1.0 millimeters. We'll use the same Speed Tool W01005 V-bit and the Sharpro 1/8 inch upcut end mill. We'll go down here and we'll name this toolpath 10.52 underscore Zank underscore 4.75-2.25 underscore plug. And we can calculate that out. And now if we zoom out and we preview our visible toolpaths, you'll see that we get our plug side. The only thing left to do now is to export those out and run them on the CNC. Okay, so now that we have our first inlay cut, we'll take a look at it. And you see, this is a little bit loose, kind of wiggles around just a little bit, and it pulls out way too easily. This should be firm in the pocket, so we're going to have to adjust these. And because this is too loose, we're going to use a new set of parameters, and we're going to do that by reducing the start depth and increasing the flat depth. If our inlay had been too tight, we would have increased the start depth and decreased the flat depth. So let's go ahead and go back to our Vcarve software and adjust those toolpaths. Okay, so back in Vcarve, what we're going to do, since we already have our pocket cut, we're going to just duplicate our toolpath for our plug. So we'll right click on that and select duplicate. And then what we'll do is we will adjust or make that toolpath adjusted. In this case, I'm going to set this to 3.5 and 3.5. And again, everything else will remain the same. And we're going to call this 10.52 Zank 3.5 and 3.5 and plug. We'll calculate that out. We will reset our preview. And what we'll do here is we will adjust these up so that we are cutting first our 1/8 inch end mill and then our 10.52 degree V-bit. We can go ahead and preview the visible toolpaths. And what we'll see is that goes ahead and creates a new pocket for us. Now we can go ahead and export those out to the CNC, and we'll be right back to see what kind of a fit we have. Okay, so in the interest of saving time, we're not going to show footage of actually carving on the CNC for the additional toolpaths because they pretty much look the same all the way through. But what I will show you is that I have a plug and the pocket for our Zank toolpath. This is the 3.5 millimeter start depth and flat depth. And what we'll see with this one when we insert it is that it fits in nice and tight. There's no movement whatsoever. No movement, and it's very, very difficult to pull back out. So this should be a good depth and should leave us without any kind of glue gaps around the surface when we carve it. Okay, so now without gluing, we're going to go ahead and take this to the bandsaw and remove the top layer of this inlay so I can show you that it's tight, and be very careful not to get yourself caught up in the blade. These are small pieces and I normally would just cut them off with the CNC. Alright, so if you look real close, you'll see all around our inlay there are no gaps whatsoever. So it's very tight. When it gets glued up, that will be a perfect inlay. Okay, now that we've gotten good parameters for our Zank Vcarve Inlay, I'm going to give you a quick tip here on how to make sure you always remember these settings. What you can do is you can go under Toolpaths and your tool database, and once that opens up, you can select your tool, and in this case it's my V-bit and it is my W01005. And in the notes section you can put in your parameters. See, I've done this in the past for the Vcarve Inlay Toolpath, so we'll go ahead and do one for our current. Wait for the computer to catch up with me there. Okay. So we're going to, on this one, say Zank Inlay Vcarve Inlay Toolpath. And we'll say pocket 6.0 millimeters. Plug start depth is 3.5 millimeters. Flat depth 3.5 millimeters. And then we can apply that and say OK. And now our settings are saved. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump into the Vcarve Inlay Toolpath. Very first thing I'll do is I will reset our preview so that we get rid of the old stuff. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do Vcarve Inlay Toolpath. So our pocket depth is going to be 6. For our glue gap, we're going to start our glue gap off, and we'll set our glue gap at 1.5 and our surface gap at 2.5. And we will call that 10.52 underscore 0-6 for the plug side underscore 1.5-2.5 for the plug side. And we'll call it VCIT for Vcarve Inlay Toolpath. We are going to do a vector offset. We'll set that to about 5 millimeters, but that's not important. We're going to wind up deleting that vector because, as you'll see, the toolpath will calculate and create the mirrored image with its offset. So we'll go ahead and calculate that. And again, we have our error saying that our toolpath is not going to be wide enough to allow for our 1/8 inch end mill. Go ahead and say OK. Now we need to switch back over to our 2D toolpath. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that 5 millimeter offset. And what we'll do is instead, we will redo this toolpath. Sorry, let's make sure I got the right toolpath. See, that's the clearance on the plug. So yeah, that's the right toolpath. We're going to select our inverse or our mirrored 7, and we're going to take that square toolpath around, and we're going to recalculate that. So now we have our square toolpath. It's just easier. It saves a little bit of time on generating this. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to start with our plug side. But we want to get our toolpaths lined up so that we're using our 1/8 inch bit first, then our V-bit for the plug, and then V-bit for the pocket. And if we preview those visible toolpaths, you'll see that it is going to go ahead and create our pocket. And what we'll see is that we've got a plug and a pocket path. Now we can go down to the CNC and cut those, and I will show you what the result of that cut was. Okay, so after the CNC, we've got our 1.5 and 2.5 plug, and you'll notice that it slides in and it's very, very loose. So because this is loose, we're going to have to adjust the parameters on this. And for this, we're going to take our pocket depth and subtract or increase our glue gap and increase our saw gap or surface gap. And that will again equal our plug depth plus 1 millimeter. So we'll go ahead and do that and adjust and go back to the software to do so. Okay, so back in the software, what we're going to do is we're going to go down and find our clearance plug, and we're going to duplicate that toolpath, and that is actually going to create two more toolpaths for us. And what we're going to do is we're going to open up that duplicated toolpath. And this time we're going to change our parameters. And this time we're going to use 1.65 for the glue gap and 2.65 for the surface gap. So we've increased both of those to try to make this a bit tighter. And we will change the name of that to 10.52 underscore 1.65 dash 2.65 underscore vsit plug. Get rid of that clear. We'll calculate that out. Reset our preview. And we want to preview our visible toolpaths. And that'll give us a new plug that we can cut out, and we'll go ahead and get to the CNC and cut that out now. Okay, so we've got our 1.65 glue gap and 2.65 surface gap cut, and when we try to fit them, we give it a little squeeze, we have a tight fit, very, very difficult to pull out. So this should be sufficient for our inlay. We'll go cut the top off of this and show you how it looks. Okay, so after we've cut off the top, we see once again we have an inlay with no gaps whatsoever. So when we get that glued up, this would again be a perfect inlay. So now that I've shown you how to determine good parameters for end grain inlays using the Zank method and the Vcarve Inlay Toolpath method, let's take a special look at the special considerations for face grain inlays, which are less common but can still be tricky to get right. Let's take a look. Okay, starting with the Zank method, we're going to make some adjustments to our tool paths, and we're going to start by duplicating. We're going to start by duplicating the pocket tool path, and then we will also duplicate our 3.5 tool path. All right, so going back to our pocket, we're going to open that up, and the very first thing that we're going to do is on the tool itself, we're going to edit that, and we're going to change the pass depth to 1.0 millimeters. Then we can remove the 1/8 inch end mill there, and we're going to use our same V-bit, our speed tool W01005, and this time we're going to go our full pass depth of 7.5 millimeters. So we'll go ahead and select that as our clearance tool for the pocket side. And we will keep the naming pretty much the same, except we will add face grain to the end so that we know we have our correct toolpath. So what you see here is you have two face grain toolpaths that have been made here. We want to make sure in order that they go with the V-bit going at a 1mm depth first, and then the clearance tool. So if we do these in order, zoom out here, we'll start with our pocket V-bit. Slow the speed down so we can see it. And what you'll see is that it goes around the contours of the pocket. It doesn't just dive all the way down, it goes slowly, and this is going to help us to prevent chip out on the pocket side. And this should give us a little bit of a tighter tool path. Next, we do our clearance tool path, and this one is going to dive the entire depth and clear out the rest of the pocket for us. And it's not going to hit our sides directly, so it reduces the chance of chipping it out quite a bit. So we run our same 1/8 inch tool path, but this time with a full depth of 6mm, and it'll clear out all of the excess material in the pocket. Okay, so now moving on to our plug tool path. The plugs and indicated with 1 and square brackets behind it are the duplicate paths that were made. So we're going to open that up, and we see we have our start depth and flat depth. And in this case, again, we're going to edit our tool, and we're going to change our pass depth to 1.0mm. For our clearance tools, we're going to select that V-bit again, and we're going to go with our full pass depth of 7.5mm. Then the next thing we need to do is to adjust that so that it cuts before the 1/8 inch bit. And then we can go ahead and calculate this, and this time we're going to give it a name of the plug with face grain. And this gives us a warning telling us that our area clearance tool has a larger included angle than the carving tool. This is okay. This is not going to affect the inlay. All right, so now we're going to arrange the plug to also do the 1mm path first, and then we will go down for our clearance tool, and move our 1/8 inch bit to the last, so that the first paths that'll get cut when we export all of these will be the V bit followed by the 1/8 inch bit. All right, so let's go ahead and start looking at how this is going to cut. So starting with our plug, our first path is our V-bit, going at 1 millimeter deep. And if we execute this tool path, and we'll see we go 1 millimeter depths all the way around. And then we will clear our tool out. We actually won't need that. We'll be able to delete that and use just the clearance number 2, which would be our 1/8 inch bit. So we will go ahead and delete that, and we will do all of our face grain toolpaths in a row. So in total there will be 4 toolpaths, and we will preview the visible toolpaths. And you see that it's going to do the contours of the pocket and the plug. And then the toolpath. And I think I've got something wrong with that toolpath, so we're going to edit that. Clearance number 2. Let's calculate that. Yep, I needed to recalculate the toolpath after deleting the bit, so we should be good to go there. And again, we're going to make sure that we're in the order on our face grain. We've got the V-bit for the pocket, the V-bit clearance, or V-bit for the plug, the V-bit for the clearance tool on the pocket, and the sharp row 1/8 inch upcut end mill for the clearance on the plug. So now we just need to export those out, and we'll get them run on the CNC, and I'll show you the end result. So the first tool paths that we see are going to be the contours around the pocket and then the contours around the plug side. And then we'll go back with our clearance tool paths and clear those out. And fresh off the CNC, we'll see that there's no chip out on either the pocket side or the plug side. Now we'll trim all the excess material off the plug and the pocket, and we'll be ready to fit it. And here is our end result. When we actually glue this, those gaps will be filled up. Now let's take a look at the adjustments we need to make on the Vcarve Inlay Toolpath available in Vcarve Desktop and Aspire. For the Vcarve Inlay Toolpath, we need to start by duplicating some paths again, starting with the 0 to 6 pocket. Since I've tuned in the parameters at 1.65 and 2.65, I don't have a pocket for that. I have the original pocket from the 1.5 to 2.5. So we're going to go ahead and duplicate that. And then we'll also duplicate the plug for the 1.65 to 2.65. All right, so we will start with our 1.5, 2.5 VSit and edit that toolpath. And this is going to be just like the last one that we did with a traditional or Zank inlay. We're going to edit our tool, and we're going to set the pass depth at 1.0 millimeters. And we will apply that. And then we will also set the clearance tool as our V-bit. But this time, again, we will go the full 7.5 millimeter cutting depth. So we can select that and make sure that that's above the SharpRow 1/8 inch, which we can actually remove because that toolpath won't use it anyway. And for our path, we'll call it 0, 6, and 1.65, 2.65, VCIT, and underscore face grain. And we'll calculate that out. Reset our preview. And now if we run the V-bit toolpath first, you'll see that it once again will create the toolpath that is only the contour of the pocket, and then we'll go and run the clearance toolpath, and we'll see that that same bit will clear out the remainder of the pocket. So we'll arrange those to where our first V-bit runs, and then we'll have the clearance tool run afterwards. Okay, moving on to the plug side of things, we will now take our plug and we will go in and edit that. And we are going to, again, change our pass depth on our V-bit to 1 millimeter. And then for our clearance tools, we're going to keep that 1/4 inch, or I'm sorry, 1/8 inch upcut end mill, but we're also going to add our V-bit again. So we'll add our speed tool W1005. This time we will go a full cut depth of 7.5 millimeters. And now the important thing here is go ahead and leave that speed tool bit as the second clearance tool, and we're going to make some adjustments to that once we generate the carve. So we're going to name that as our plug, and we're going to say underscore face grain. What this will do is calculate out 3 paths, as we see here. We've got our plug face grain, clear 1, and clear 2. Now the way we want to arrange these in such a way is that our 2 V-bit clearance, our 1 millimeter path is first, and then our full depth clearance with the V-bit, and then our 1/8 inch end mill. So we're out of order right now, so we're going to take that clear 2 and we're going to move that up to be our second carve in the path. And now we can export out all 5 of our tool paths. Actually, let's run these so you can see what's going to happen with the plug side. So starting with our 1 millimeter depth, when we run that, 1 millimeter depth, it's going to go along the contours of the plug. Till it goes all the way down. It'll make 7 passes to go down. Our next path is our clearance path, and it's going to go the full depth of the 7 in one shot. And you'll see it only hits a couple of areas to clear in order to give clearance to the final tool path, which is our 1/8 inch end mill. So once our tool paths are ready to go, we can export those out to the CNC, and we'll come back and take a look at the end result. In this video, I've shown you the methodology I use for determining Vcarve inlay parameters for both end grain and face grain inlays using Vectric Vcarve, Desktop, Pro, and Aspire. If you found the information to be useful, please like and subscribe to my channel. You can also drop a comment on the video if you have any questions. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Here's some other videos I think you'll enjoy from my channel.